For each race, we've got to qualify once. It's a 20-minute session where everyone gets to go out and do the fastest time they can, and then that sets the grid position for the race. It is absolutely as it was in the 60s when the circuit closed. It's a very high-speed circuit, very little runoff. You've got to, make sure you really don't want to be coming off the circuit.
I grew up coming here and watching my dad race, and I was only a small boy, and to be here now in the same event in the same car, I don't know, 15 years later, is pretty special.
It's the complete opposite. So in Formula One, you have massive amounts of downforce. It's milliseconds to really perfect everything. With these, they're monsters around here. No downforce. It's all mechanical grip, tiny little tires.
Hi, I'm Kirby Allison, and for years now, I've been exploring the world of quality, craftsmanship, and tradition. This journey has taken me from some of the world's most highly regarded bespoke tailoring houses, all the way to a proper shooting estate in Scotland. I've come to believe that nobody does tradition better than the British. From dressing in the proper attire for a given occasion, through the liturgy of the ceremonial, there is always an etiquette at its core. The traditions of dressing properly, the traditions of the country pursuits, the traditions of British ceremony. But in today's video, we explore what could be one of the most exciting of the British traditions, racing. I've been invited by my good friend James to join him as he prepares to race his 1959 Togero in the Goodwood Revival, arguably the world's most renowned vintage racing event. So strap in and enjoy as we experience Britain's golden era of racing. Day 3, the final day. With the biggest races still to come, the crowds were out in force, their fantastic vintage costumes on full display. It is easy to see how that era still manages to inspire the fashions of today. But that inspiration is certainly not limited to clothes alone. The wonderful vintage cars on display at the Goodwood Revival, in addition to their racing pedigree, will all have played significant and inspiring roles to the development of car design throughout the ages right up to the present day. In my quest for further insight, I'm lucky that Simon Cundey knows just the man for me to talk to. Simon, so great to see you again. And what another beautiful day. It's day 3 here at Goodwood. This is the final day, Sunday. And yeah, nice to see you again.
It's a pleasure, Kirby. Always a special day here. This is obviously the big day today, the TT. And of course, James is driving later on as well, so it's a big one. But I'd love you to introduce to a dear friend of mine going back a long way, is Marek Richman, who's Chief Designer.
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
And you.
Absolutely. We've done a number of projects, obviously, with Marek over the years. We dressed for a lovely driving suit about 2010.
Yeah.
We dressed the Lagonda.
Yes.
Dressed the 177. So we've done a number of projects. But
and of course today.
Today, of course, as well, with the Donegal Cashmere, which is lovely, really nice. So America's been here for really from the founding days of actually very much the revival. And now it's very much the Thrive and Revive is the core theme, which goes very much into the clothing aspect of what we do here, bringing back clothing from the past and also new clothing. But really with Aston Martin, it's a very special place. So Marek has been very much involved.
Yeah, and I think part of that is it's the materiality of the period. So as a designer of current cars, future cars, we should always respect and understand the past. And if you look at cars in the past, they did so many unusual things with materials, with color. And this is one of the most exceptional museums, moving museums in the world. Most of the cars are restored to their original specification. They use the original materials, they use colors that you just wouldn't dream of. So for me, it's an experience and also inspiration, because I look back at some of the original interior materials, the color of them, the weave. Now in ultra luxury, we would assume only leather. But if you look back in 40s, 50s, 30s, even the 60s, the woven cloths, the silks, the wools, the cashmeres that you would find, and the color of them. You see a black and white photograph of a period car, you have no idea how intense the color is. So for me, this weekend, it's 3 Christmases in a row.
So even as a designer of modern vehicles, you're able to draw inspiration and inform what you're doing through what you see here historically at Goodwood.
Absolutely, and I think it's, everyone is dressed so smartly. So you look back at detail, the attention to detail, and the Duke of Richmond himself put so much attention to the detailing of Goodwood. And it's not just the clothing, it's not just the scenery that you see, it's the invitations, the ticketing. They're paper tickets with string. And that kind of level of detailing that makes you understand how important design is. Because this is a detail, that's a tiny detail, but it's so important for me and my team coming here to see the finesse that goes into that, the 0.5 millimeter difference, the tiny piece of string, the attention to detail, and detail is king.
Now you say you've been involved since the beginning. Has it always been like this?
I think I was the very first revival, and of course the escalation has grown, but the attention to detail has always been there. And in fact, the very first revival, I think about 50% of us turned up not in period, and by the Thursday, we'd gone out to the second-hand stores to buy period, because we just couldn't imagine how much the scene was set for the period of let's say, the 40s. And you would walk into the driver's mess, and it was a mess hall from the Second World War with sandbags and monitors that were 1940s monitors. In the driver's mess today, you can watch the race on a 1950s monitor, a cathode ray tube monitor in black and white.
Amazing.
And it is a spectacle, a true spectacle.
I mean, there's really no detail that's left kind of untouched here. And it's one of the things that I think really makes Goodwood, such an experience. I mean, it is so much more than just a race. And it's interesting how the Duke of Richmond has been able to pull that all together. For Aston Martin, why is this an important event to be involved in?
Well, it's important because obviously we have a wealth of history. We're next year 110 years old. So we're one of the oldest car brands. And obviously, if you look through pre-war, post-war period, some of the most iconic cars on the planet, a DB5 for instance. So it's important because we have a group of collectors of period cars. Typically, if they're collecting old Aston Martins, they're interested in the modern cars as well. And actually in the Earl's Court, we have a DBX 707, and we've got one of our latest cars, the Valhalla, which is our first PHEV, our first plug-in hybrid. So it's not just about the past, but those cars are presented as future concept cars. So even that detail of, well, how can you have a modern car in an old setting? They're presented as though they were future design studies, and people go in and see them, and we will make, obviously, interest in our company to buy cars.
I mean, it's interesting. It goes back to what the Duke says so often, which is revive and thrive, which by really kind of looking into the past and honoring that, reviving it, it helps better inform where we go in the future.
Absolutely. If you don't understand your past, then it's very, very difficult to improve on that, because you need to understand, you need to take a nod to the past, but think about the future as a designer. If you don't truly understand what's been before, how do you know you're not repeating? And if you know what went before, you can change, improve, and move and evolve.
And that's very much the same with clothing design. It's like a complete cycle. So we go through cycles of what was in fashion in the 30s, goes back to again the 20th century, and that's what we do all the time. So we look at the past often to bring things forward, like we did with our travel trench, that travel trench raincoat we did, taking a lovely lines from that timeless tailcoat back and bringing something into forward in a modern day Gore-Tex cloth, and that's just what we do. So working on these sort of projects is what we do with people at Aston Martin, and it's a great heritage brand as much as it looks to the future as well.
And I think also for us, part of the process is all of our cars are bespoke. 110 years, we've made about 110,000 cars. That's 2 days of production for Toyota, but it took us 110 years. So, and every single car is individual. So you can use Q by Aston Martin and literally specify your car with the suit material you're wearing. We would take exactly the black of your tie and match that to a paint color. And that's why the tailoring is so important, because effectively you tailor every single Aston Martin to your own individual fingerprint.
It's one of the interesting things about British culture. I mean, we saw this through our Suit to Shoot series, where the clothing and the lifestyle is so much, is so integrated, right? I mean, none of these things are really done independently of one another. So the race car drivers dress smart in their suits. The way that the cars are kind of reflecting or echoing a lot of those elements of tailoring and vice versa, really creates just kind of an interesting environment.
In fact, it's one of the great suits I have. We came up with the idea to repeat exactly a driver's suit from the 50s. And the gentleman who was wearing the suit in the time would always go to one of his clubs afterwards. So he would go racing in a suit. He would get out of the car and run to his club so he didn't have to change. And the suit is literally a driving suit. It looks like a suit.
Little change with safety protocol these days.
A little bit of a change.
But the design may be a little bit more elegant.
Maybe the next project is to integrate flame retardant fabrics, into your pool suits.
Well, to be honest, these days we are very much working with the mills that actually put in a Teflon finish that gives you that lovely purling, where actually rainwater just pearls on top. And also, there is a little bit of element of flame retarding. So we have worked with Aston Martin and a number of houses making these fabrics, which is also exciting.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Marek, I must ask, what is your favorite thing about this weekend?
It's so difficult. I think from Thursday to Sunday, the cricket match on Thursday, for me, one of the pinnacles is to see the TT race that we'll see today. The cars, the drivers, the spectacle, the racing is intense.
And these are the most rare vehicles.
They are some of the most rare vehicles on the planet. But I have to say, in my heart, this morning was the Chichester Cup, which is for Formula Junior cars. It's one of the cars I've raced here many times, and I love seeing those cars. The driving skill, because in a Formula Junior, it's about precision. It's not about a little bit of a brute force. You have to be precise. They're light cars. They're underpowered, really. So it's all about precision driving, and it's such a spectacle.
Excellent. Well, Marek, hey, thank you so much, of course, for your time and for all the incredible work that you're doing at Aston Martin. I mean, producing some absolutely astounding vehicles, just like this James Bond DB5 we have right here. Incredible work.
Thank you.
With Marek's favorite, the Chichester Cup, already underway, it was time to get the big race day started. With crowds of over 100,000 expected today, and the biggest races yet to come, the tension was really starting to mount. The next big race was the RAC TT Celebration, featuring the driving pair of Harry Newey and Jenson Button. So while the drivers began to assemble, I took the opportunity to head back to the paddock to catch up with James before he commenced his own big race prep.
Well, here we're in front of the Giugiaro. Of course, you qualified yesterday. Are you happy with where you are in the pole for today's race?
I mean, look, I'd like to be on the front row of the grid, but there's only 1.5 tenths of a second between the front 4 people. Unfortunately, I'm 4th. That said, I'm starting on the inside of the track, so maybe if I get a good start, I can get to the inside and at least mix it with the first and second position. But we'll see. It's also a 25-minute race, and we've got to get to the end of it. But yeah, I'm really excited about it. Just such a long wait. I've got to wait until 4:45 today.
I know. Well, I mean, with the Sussex Trophy, I mean, you have, what is still a broad range of vehicles. I mean, how do you approach the race just with the other competitors? Because every car is a little bit different than the other.
Yeah, I mean, it's, really you get involved in your own sort of package or your own little race where we have, the front-running cars that would probably be the top 6 or so dicing together, and then there'll be another race within the race.
Yeah.
So, we've got to be really careful when we come across the back markers, but the marshals here do a fantastic job of waving the blue flags. And it's easier for them in a race condition than it is for a qualifying environment when they're not quite sure who's the fastest, but when they watch the start of the race, they know. So yeah, it's just down to also the drivers, when you're approaching them, knowing that faster cars are approaching. Because as we discussed, it's a very dangerous circuit.
What's been lovely also is to, feeling the right feel for it, getting the right feel for the atmosphere. We've experienced that this weekend. I've experienced for many years, and sharing it's been wonderful. And I think I'm really pleased that the suit worked out. Obviously, that blends in very well.
Well, so. I'm not exaggerating, but so many people have commented on my suit. I went to give a talk in the Salvadori pavilions the other morning about what it's like to race historic cars. And there was only 20 people in the room, and 3 people came up to me immediately and said, "Great suit, where's that from?" So of course, I sent them your way.
Very kind, James. That's what it's all about. Lovely recommendations. But it's naturally it happens, and that's what our job is done. Anyone in Savile will tell you, the comments you get is the best comments from customers when they tell you that that's happened to them, whether it be in the lounge or on a train or in a car. This is what happens.
Yeah.
So great to hear.
And it's worked as well. It's travelled well. It's the right weight for the, this autumnal weather. It's very cold in the late afternoon, evening, but it's warm now. I caught the sun yesterday, but it's been great for the event. So yeah, very grateful.
And we picked out the colour of the check.
Yeah,
we got the lining inside.
Here we go with the blue, with
exactly.
the Cos blue. Yeah, I think it works very well. Yeah.
Well, and in keeping with the period, I mean, you're looking incredibly smart, of course, in the pool suit, and I know you've got to run off soon because you've got the race. And best of luck. We look forward to seeing you on the podium.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to get into my Akira Cos blue uniform and get in the race car and do the business for you.
Yeah, excellent, James.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you so much.
Good luck.
We'll catch up with you after the race.
Yeah, cheers.
And we'll be there hopefully to congratulate you.
All right.
With James having gone to get himself and the Trigero ready, Simon and I joined the thousands waiting to see the start of the RAC TT Celebration. With some of the fastest vintage cars out on the track and these superb drivers coming together from throughout motorsport's toughest disciplines, the race promised to be an action-packed event right from the start.
Jensen Button stolen a march on them all.
Drivers Jensen Button and Harry Newey in their vintage Jaguar were going to have their work cut out for them. Just seconds into the race, and Jensen Button was already showing all the skill he honed as a Formula One champion.
Jensen Button goes through again in 1:23.799. Jensen Button absolutely has set a fire under that Jaguar.
With the race in full swing, and with Jensen Button having an incredible drive, the gap at the front was beginning to show. Pit crews were passing instructions to their cars as lap times and distances were being evaluated. With the TT race taking place over an entire hour, the efficiency of pit stops and driver changes were absolutely critical to maintaining position. But in racing, everything can change in an instant.
Oh dear, they've jumped out of gear, so we've lost the powertrain. Yeah, he's lost the powertrain. Harrison Newey has come out of the race. That's the end of the challenge.
With the broken drivetrain on only his second lap, the race was unfortunately over for Harry and his teammate Jensen. The yellow flag had appeared and the safety car was outslowing the other racers, while Harry and Jensen's car was removed, allowing for the action to continue. The brief pause in proceedings actually came at a perfect time, as I had been invited up to a private meeting with His Grace Duke of Richmond, a fantastic opportunity to find out more about the history of the Goodwood Revival.
Well, Your Grace, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for the invitation to be here at Goodwood. The Revival has been such an incredible event. I've enjoyed it immensely. So thank you for your time.
Excellent, so pleased.
Yeah. So a few questions. I mean, this is an incredible event. I think, I would imagine that back in the late 90s, you know, whenever you were starting Goodwood, it would have been hard to imagine what it would have grown into. Of course, you know, you started with the vintage automobiles, but you didn't stop there. You insisted on a vintage dress code and really pushed for the entire event to be reflective of that era. Why was that?
Well, I guess it just kind of came about as we put the event together. My grandfather built the track in '48. So this was the first racetrack to open after the Second World War. This was a Battle of Britain airfield in the Second World War. In fact, a very famous American pilot called Billy Fisk flew from here. He was the first American pilot killed in World War II, and he was based here. So he's a big hero. And Billy was a double gold medalist. So he's become an important part of this place. And my grandfather immediately saw the opportunity of turning what was the perimeter track to an airfield into a racetrack, because he was a keen driver before the war. So it ran from 48 to 66, and then he decided to close it.
Yeah.
So that was a bit of a blow for me as a small boy. I wasn't very happy about that. And then, because we couldn't reopen it again when we first looked at it in the 90s for all sorts of noise reasons and other problems, we then started the Festival of Speed, which takes place in front of the house at Goodwood, not here. And that became a big success. We learned a lot doing that. And that obviously wasn't on the racetrack itself. And then when we came to eventually get permission in '98, we kind of realized that actually the real defining factor of this place was the fact it had been untouched. So in fact, he shut it in '66 was pretty important, because it had never changed. And the racetrack was exactly the same as it was for all those great drivers: Moss, Fangio, Hawthorne, Clark, all that. You know, it was the golden age, the most romantic, the most glamorous moment in motorsport, really. So we just tried to really focus on that. So the moment we said, right, we're really only going to focus on cars that raced here originally, we then got into kind of, let's put the buildings back as well as we can, those wartime buildings, and why don't we get everyone to come driving the right cars when, you know, as their transport here, carrying the right picnic hampers, and then we said, well, why doesn't everyone dress up? Everyone said, a lot of people said that's a very bad idea, everyone's going to hate that, and no one's going to do that. And it took a little bit of time, but eventually it's had an amazing impact, because everyone feels that they're bringing something.
Yeah.
You know, they're bringing their bit to the whole look and feel of the event, and that they're in the movie in a way.
Yeah, really. I mean, the people that we've spoken to, you know, have really, you know, spoken so often about how coming to Goodwood is like stepping back in time. And for many, it's about the racing, but for just as many, it's about the opportunity to dress up and experience this era.
Yeah. Well, the whole vintage thing, I think, is really important, and we're really focused on this whole sort of revive and thrive ethos. So really trying to get people to think about, you know, recycle, repurpose, reuse.
Yeah.
These old cars, these racing cars are hugely valuable. Maybe they're hugely valuable now. You know, it's sort of irrelevant in a way. They're just like an old pair of shoes. You know, they've been smashed up, rebuilt, smashed up, rebuilt. They don't owe anybody anything. And you couple that with the whole vintage fashion, the whole interest in vintage fashion, the whole interest in repairing things, secondhand. You know, secondhand's great. We'd like this to be the biggest secondhand event in the world. You know, we really love that all to sort of come together with the cars, and this whole concept, which Dandy Wellington, the jazz musician, has really, you know, he's really promoted as this vintage style, not vintage values.
Yeah.
So, and that's a big thing what we're trying to do here. And Dandy's here this weekend, actually.
Yeah, excellent. I mean, it's interesting how, you know, something that's well made and well looked after can really be quite durable. And you see that in these vehicles that continue to be raced just as hard as they were originally, but also in the clothing. I mean, yesterday we had an opportunity to speak with your two sons one of whom was wearing one of your vintage suits, and the other was wearing a pair of shoes from your father.
Yeah, exactly. And they love all that too, which is great. That's great for me. So we really want to, promote the best possible, sort of, the best possible type of vintage we can.
Yeah. One of the other things that is so apparent is just how much fun this event is. I mean, it's an incredible weekend, not just for the spectators, but especially for the race car drivers. Many of these drivers have modern vehicles that they race as well, but they look forward to the revival as something really special and unique. What is it about the opportunity to race these vintage vehicles do you think continues to draw these drivers back to the Goodwood Revival?
Well, I think they love the cars, and they've seen pictures of the cars as their own careers have developed, and they've all got a lust for the cars, real cars, proper, fast, difficult. They're not easy to drive, a lot of them, and this is a very fast racetrack. So for them, it's a very, intense experience, and it's great that we're getting so many young drivers from current. From current series around the world coming and wanting to race here. And, we got some very big American drivers. Jimmy Johnson's here this weekend, Scott Dixon's here this weekend, Dario Franchitti's here. These are the guys all racing, or Dario not, but the other two very much racing currently now. We've got quite a lot of Formula E drivers taking part, excellent Formula One drivers. So that's really, really encouraging. Of course, they find these old cars quite difficult often because they're very, if you're a NASCAR driver, they're great. There's lots of power, no brakes, no steering.
Yeah, but tricky. I mean, but we found or have encountered more than one driver who are young drivers who's here driving the same vehicle that their father drove during the Goodwood era. And where else in the world can you find that?
Yeah. No, it's great, and obviously Damon Hill was world champion. We're celebrating his father this weekend, who had his first Formula One win here in the '60s, and Damon was the first. That's the first father and son world champion. Yeah, and so we're very lucky, as I said earlier, to sit in that window of when motorsport was its most glamorous.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned that about how this was the golden era of motorsports, of racing. Why was that? I mean, whenever you look back to that period in which you were a boy, what made that so special and so unique when compared to how the sport continued to evolve?
Well, I guess the technology was quite low in a way. Driver skills were high. It's interesting. They're only just getting near the lap records now. The cars are much better prepared. The tires are much better than they ever were in period. So the drivers were absolutely, they were absolutely the best drivers in the world at the time. So I think that's interesting.
But they were gentlemen. I mean, this was before the era of the professional race car driver class.
Well, they weren't just about professional. They weren't paid much. That was the other thing. There was very little money involved in the whole thing. The cars were expensive, but not as expensive as they are now to build and make. And they were real racers. They just wanted to race all the time. So, whereas an F1 driver now does one race in a weekend, these guys would have 6 races a day.
Incredible.
They'd be paid nothing for doing it, really, but they loved it.
Yeah. What's been your favorite moment of the weekend so far?
Well, the start of the TT is always a big moment. We just saw that. I mean, this is the sort of blue ribbon race, 2-driver race, lasts an hour. It's pretty full on. It's probably the most glamorous historic motor race in the world. Probably the most valuable grid of any motor race in the world. It's always, the start's always very, very exciting. But obviously we've had a lot going on. We had a lot of very emotional moments this weekend. It's been a very big weekend for us with Her Majesty, both mourning and celebrating her life and trying to create things which are memorable and meaningful for people this weekend, and that's been really important. I think it's the revival is such a shared experience for everyone. Everyone's passionate about the era, they're passionate about the cars, they're passionate about the competition, and so they're a perfect audience really to bring together to celebrate such a thing.
Yeah, it's such a great glimpse of kind of Britain at its best. I mean, there's been such a pride in the country, that's exhibited at this event, through, really, embellishing and indulging, that period that was, one of Britain's greatest.
Yeah, no, we're very pleased to be a small part of it.
Yeah. You speak of revive and thrive. Where do you see Goodwood going forward? Where does it continue to go over the next, 5-10 years?
Well, I hope just exactly like that, revive and thrive suddenly becomes something very modern. We want to push things forward. We want to get people to think about things. I think the way we use our cars is going to continue to change. Mobility will be one thing. Driving for pleasure or enjoying your motor car in a way, I think will be something different. That'll become more and more of a leisure activity. And people still want to drive hypercars. They still want to drive old cars. I think that'll carry on happening. We're running 2 cars, thanks to Aramco. We're running 2 cars on synthetic fuel this weekend.
Okay.
So that's important as well. So and that would be a big positive change.
Yeah.
All these cars we're running. So I think we're very keen. You talked about. This is about looking back. In a way, for me, it's about looking forward. It's about trying to take the best of vintage, the best of the past, and then use that to kind of look forward in a really positive way. I see it as a very positive thing involving a continually, hopefully, younger audience, rather than something which just gets older and older and dies out. Yeah. And we need to make sure that happens. But I think it's turned a corner. And I think we're getting I know we are getting a younger generation getting excited about it. And actually, that's where all the dressing brilliantly, we know that. I mean, the kids want to make the best of things. They want things to last. They don't want to throw things away, actually. Yeah. And I think that those particular generations are more and more concerned about that, and they'll be, and things will change, and that's positive.
Yeah. Well, Grace, it's easy to see why this is referred to as the greatest vintage motor racing event in the world. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for having us out here this weekend. And we look forward to seeing the Goodwood Revival continue to thrive.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Great to have you here.
What an experience it had been to learn about the Goodwood Revival from His Grace, the Duke of Richmond himself. However, the time had come for the Sussex Trophy. This was it. The decisive moment towards which the whole weekend had been building. Down in the assembly area, the cars were lined up and the drivers were donning their safety gear. This was the culmination of weeks of preparation, beginning months ago back in the workshop of DK Engineering with just the mechanics in the car. Then the countless hours of test driving, adjustment, and fine-tuning of this beautiful 1959 Trigero Jaguar. All of this with one goal in mind, the Sussex Trophy. And all of that hard work would eventually come down to just 25 minutes of race time. The crowds had gathered, squeezing in along every inch of the track, eager for a view of the race to come. Over 100,000 people stood in anticipation. With the cars now in position on the grid, this was it. All or nothing. Despite an electrifying start to the race, James had not yet found his best form, and soon he had dropped back into the 5th position.
And the orange car of Miles Griffiths has already gone by the Tagera of James Cottingham and now looking inside Roger Wilson.
However, perseverance and skill eventually began to show, and James managed not only to claw back 4th, but to push on even further. After 18 minutes of racing, James had moved into the 2nd position.
Not just because he retired, but because he's getting a face full of steam as you're just a...
Cottingham now right with David Hart. James Cottingham from 4th on the grid. Electrifying getaway at the start, made a good restart, as did David Hart.
Our Witchback marker just can't get out of their path, because certainly what we saw there.
With only 6 minutes of the race left, it seemed like now or never for James to make his move. One moment of sheer guts, and all the glory would be his.
Look how much more Cottingham's got. He goes the long way around the outside. David Hart almost made contact. Little hand out to the cockpit. Thank you, says James Cottingham.
He had done it. He was in 1st place, but he was going to have to hold on to it for 4 more minutes. And then, with only 2 minutes left in the race, everything changed.
So there you go. There is Alistair Costin, same car, different power plant. Again, you know, there'll be some trouble for the number 11.
It just closes right in.
We will just document for the red flag. The race is over. It is victory for James Cottingham. David Hart hangs on to 2nd. He sees the red flag, James Cottingham. He knows what it means.
So there we have it, the Sussex Trophy, taken by our James Cottingham. I mean, what an incredible example of driving at its finest, and not just great driving, but great driving in some of the finest vintage automobiles anywhere in the world. This is why the Goodwood Revival is known as one of the greatest vintage motor racing events in the world. Well, James, hey, congratulations.
Thank you.
I mean, what
Thank
an
you.
incredible race, taking in the 1st place position. I mean, brilliant,
I
absolutely
know,
brilliant.
and it wasn't straightforward. So it's like the start, I just couldn't get off the line, and then suddenly I was P5, and the Lotuses were in front of me, so I had so much work to do. But once I got past them, I just needed to home in on the 2 front runners, and unfortunately one of them retired. But I think I had the pace, and anyway, managed to get past and into the lead. So yeah, amazing race.
Yeah, I mean, 20 some odd minute race. I mean, a lot can happen in what seems like not a lot of time. And this is a great example of that.
Yeah, and it's, you know, that's all it takes is like the adrenaline, that short sort of 25-minute race, we saw cars spinning off, hitting the wall, braking. Yeah. So yeah, it was action-packed.
I mean, one mistake, everything changes.
Absolutely, and a few times, I was absolutely like 99.9% to the limit.
Yeah. When you took the 33, the first car, that was an amazing overtake. I thought you were really on the edge there.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was a do or die maneuver because everywhere else he was just going to get in my way. So it was like, I could see that he was a bit slower there on the lap 4, and I thought, I'm committed here, let's go.
And there still was a little bit of kissing, right? I mean,
it was unnecessary.
Was a little rubbed,
Yeah, it was unnecessary, but that's, that's some drivers sometimes like to leave it a bit closer than I would, so anyway.
Leave a little mark.
Yeah, leaving a little mark. It's a Goodwood mark, part of its history.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this was such a great example of what makes the Goodwood Revival, one of the greatest motor racing events in the world. Yeah. I mean, incredible vehicles, pushed to the nines, great racing, and, just absolutely fantastic entertainment.
Yep, and then at the end there, when I had my wife in the car and we're going around on the parade lap, and you just see, there's over 100,000 people there. I mean, it's just fabulous.
Hang on to your hat.
Yeah.
Boy.
We had a test run earlier in the tester also.
Did you?
Yeah.
Fair enough.
So guys, look, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed the event. Yeah. Thank you for the suit. And look forward to welcoming you back again.
We'll have to do it again. Thank you for the invitation.
Kirby, thank you.
Congratulations.
And Simon.
Pleasure.
Well
always.
Done.
We'll
thank
catch
you so
up again,
much.
no doubt. Okay.
Right.
Great.
Cheers. With the racing done, the cars were now being prepped for their journeys back home. The Goodwood Revival began to draw to a close. As the crowds filed out after all of the excitement, I definitely needed a moment to catch my breath and to fully savor the incredible experience the Goodwood Revival weekend had provided. Well, Simon, I mean, what a weekend and what a race.
Wasn't it just? With James, what a build-up. I mean, obviously for us, working with James, dressing James, we knew that there was out there. We knew he had the passion in his car. We knew the car was good. But what we went through, like any drive, it's just emotional to see that going from, fourth to fifth and then back through again.
Yeah,
and,
all the way to the first spot. Yeah. I mean, it really just, in racing, shows how exciting it is. That just in a second, everything can change. And, this race, he started out in the fourth pole position. One car fell out, another car caught on fire. I think we had one or two cars run into the barrier. It was a real back and forth race.
That's the Revival. It happens every year. It's, passionate driving, passionate cars, and beautiful people that are here, and that's what's special about the Revival.
I'm just struck that, here we have these absolutely incredible, and in many cases, priceless vintage automobiles, being raced to the nines. They're putting them out there on the track. They're not holding back. And at this event, you really are able to truly relive the 40s, the 50s, and 60s. It's not just one class of vehicle. You've got, basically vehicles spanning 30 years, the golden era of motorsports. And you can see that all in one weekend.
Exactly. It's very raw then. It's very raw then in this periods. And you really feel for the driving because you can see it more. You can actually see it the way it handles. You can see it in the way the steering is going left to right, right to left. That's what you can see here. So people even aspire to come here just to experience not only just the dress sense but the actual driving itself.
Yeah, just like the cars. His Grace, the Duke of Richmond, spoke about this. And his Revive and Thrive, is just the durability to things well made and well maintained. And I think one of the things that I see so often about a bespoke suit that is really impressive, especially when you come to an event like Goodwood where you see so many vintage bespoke suits, is that they are made to be durable, to have longevity, and to really last, the ages.
Absolutely, and I think that's also with the women too. You see them picking out dresses that were beautifully made in the sort of 60s or the 50s, and there they were wearing them today. And they're not throwing them away. They're pulling them out from the wardrobe. They're bringing them here, and they look absolutely stunning. Yeah. So long may this reign, long may this last, and I think it will. And it's the next generation that's coming through, the young, the fresh, that love to aspire to the beauty in the cars as much as it is the dress. So.
Yeah. I say incredible, but it's really incredible just the timelessness of classic style. The pieces that we see here at Goodwood, the pieces that you're making at Henry Poole, have a timeless and classic elegance to them that allows them to literally span generations.
Absolutely. No, I think it's that way forward. I think people are realizing it. People are seeing now, from pieces like you do, Kirby, that you're seeing that now. And believe that the craft and the passion that you drive is now getting through to the next generation, and we're seeing it. So thank you to that. I think it's great.
Well, here's cheers to quality, craftsmanship, and tradition. Thank you, Simon, for another great journey and an absolutely beautiful weekend.
Cheers, Kirby. Absolutely, and revive and thrive.
Revive and thrive.
Cheers.
Cheers. Well, what an incredible weekend. Unfortunately, it has come to an end. The races are over. The winners have been declared. To be transported back into the 40s, the 50s, and the 60s has truly been astounding. I've had so much fun. And it's easy to understand why this era is referred to as the golden era of racing. From the technological development year over year, nothing was ever the same. It made things interesting, it made things exciting, and it made things dangerous. Second, this gentleman class of racers, they were the ones out here on the track risking their lives on the weekends. It wasn't dominated by a professional class of driver. So you had these amateur enthusiasts who were able to take cars that they owned, drive it to the track, and race. They were able to push these vehicles to the nines and have an incredible amount of fun, really pushing the limits. And of course, it was dangerous. This is before the development of modern safety technology. The cars were changing every week, every year. And so these drivers, whenever they came out onto this track, literally risked their lives. It made for some tragedies, but it also made for some really interesting racing. And then of course there was my favorite part, which is the fashion of this era. Some of the best timeless classic fashion of really the 20th century. And you're able to see it in its full glory here at the Goodwood Revival as everyone that attends dresses up and literally transports themselves back to that era. That is why the Goodwood Revival, of course, is considered the greatest vintage automobile racing event in the world, not just for the race car drivers, but for the spectators. I hope you've enjoyed this series. Of course, I'm Kirby Allison, and I love to help the well-dressed acquire and care for their wardrobes while discovering the world of quality, craftsmanship, and tradition. Thanks for watching.